There comes a moment in life when you begin to understand something simple yet life-changing. The weight you've been carrying was never really yours. You've taken on every harsh word, every disapproving glance, every quiet dismissal like it was carved into your worth. And there comes a point when you look around and think, how much more of this can I hold? But maybe the answer isn't to keep holding it all. Maybe real strength doesn't come from carrying everything, but from knowing what to put down. And sometimes that means learning to stop caring so much, not because your heart has gone cold, but because it's finally grown wise. This isn't about pretending you don't feel. It's about feeling fully, then choosing not to be ruled by those feelings. It's about standing in the storm, not because you're untouched by it, but because you've decided your peace isn't up for negotiation. You don't need to respond to every voice, every opinion, every provocation. Some things are best left unanswered. When you act as though you don't care, in the moments that ask for distance, what you're really doing is protecting what matters. You're saying, without shouting, this doesn't define me. And that quiet refusal to be shaken is where freedom begins. The heaviest burdens aren't always the loud ones. Sometimes it's the invisible pressure to please, to prove, to be accepted. You carry the weight of other people's expectations like an invisible pack strapped to your back. And over time, that kind of emotional labor wears you thin. Detachment isn't numbness, it's clarity. It's stepping outside of that constant loop of needing to be understood, validated, admired. When every slight cuts deep, you bleed out energy that should be fueling your own path. But when you start observing instead of absorbing, you create space. And in that space, something powerful happens. You begin to breathe again. The problem isn't that you care, it's that you've cared so much for so long about things that were never worthy of your energy. Approval, status, image. None of these can give you peace, yet you've let them define your value. When your sense of worth rises and falls with someone else's mood or opinion, you've given away the reins. Detachment gives them back. Not to make you indifferent, but to make you sovereign. You start to understand that the only voice you must live with every day is your own. And when that voice grows calm and certain, the outside world starts to lose its grip. Think about the people who move through conflict without losing their center. They don't fight every battle, not because they're weak, but because they've learned which ones matter. They've cultivated the ability to stay rooted while everything around them spins. That's what emotional detachment gives you. Not an escape from emotion, but a filter, a pause, a choice. You stop reacting to every push and pull and instead begin to respond with intention. In that space between what happens and how you handle it, there's immense power. You're no longer operating from fear or ego. You're choosing from strength. Detachment doesn't ask you to shut your heart. It simply asks you to stop handing it over to everyone who reaches for it. You learn to hold space for your feelings without being swept away by them. Your sensitivity becomes something you manage, not something that manages you. This kind of strength doesn't come with armor made of steel. It's more like tempered glass. Strong, clear, flexible. You begin to ask yourself, is this worth my peace? And more often than not, the answer is no. You become selective, not cynical. Grounded, not guarded. When you seem like you don't care, what you're really doing is preserving what's sacred inside you. The truth is, caring too much opens the door to being used. When people sense that your identity hinges on their approval, they can twist that. They can make you doubt yourself, lead you down paths that weren't yours to walk. Detachment breaks that pattern. It teaches you how to draw a quiet line between what's you and what isn't. You learn when to walk away, when to say no, when to protect your own narrative. You stop living in reaction to everyone else and start living in alignment with yourself. This isn't coldness. This is inner peace. And in the end, you don't lose your heart. You just stop giving it away to those who never earned it. When you stop caring about the opinions of people who don't support or uplift you, you stop giving them permission to shape your reality. You reclaim your emotional space and energy. And with that, you begin to rebuild your sense of power. You're no longer at the mercy of someone else's mood, approval, or attention. Instead, you become grounded in something deeper, your own sense of self. This is what emotional detachment really means. It's not indifference, and it's not avoidance. It's a conscious, repeated choice to not give your power away to things that don't serve you. It's the quiet strength of knowing that not every opinion deserves a reaction, and not every judgment needs to be absorbed. Detachment isn't an overnight change, it's a daily practice. A mental reset that allows you to stop internalizing every rude comment, every disappointment, every unfair moment. You still feel things, but you no longer carry them with you. You don't let someone else's behavior become your burden. And that kind of release takes discipline. It takes courage, especially when your instincts tell you to defend yourself or shut down. But the more you practice this way of being, the stronger your inner peace becomes. You learn that it's not your job to hold every emotion that passes through your space. Not every wave is meant to pull you under. When you detach in the right way, your resilience grows. You stop seeing failure as a personal blow and instead begin to view it as something separate from your identity. Setbacks are no longer proof of inadequacy. They're just part of the process. You begin to realize that disappointment is temporary, but your calm can be permanent if you guard it. You start to recognize that your emotional stability is your most valuable asset, and no one else should have the power to shake it without your permission. Caring too much, especially about things outside your control, will drain you. When your self-worth is wrapped around how others see you or what results you achieve, you're always chasing something that can be taken away. But detachment helps you shift that. You no longer need constant reassurance. You stop tying your identity to external outcomes or people's fleeting approval. You start to love yourself in a way that doesn't change with circumstance. That doesn't mean you shut down. There's a fine line between healthy detachment and emotional withdrawal. True detachment is about balance. Too little of it, and you get overwhelmed. Too much, and you become disconnected from the world. The goal isn't to stop feeling, it's to stop allowing those feelings to run your life. You begin to care wisely. You learn when to hold on and when to release. That kind of discernment is self-respect. It's emotional maturity, and it becomes a powerful form of protection. Acting like you don't care in the right context is not coldness. It's a boundary. It's you saying, my energy is sacred. My peace is non-negotiable. You draw that line not because you're bitter, but because you've learned that not everyone deserves access to your heart. You've discovered that emotional availability doesn't mean emotional vulnerability to those who haven't earned your trust. You begin to protect your spirit, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. At the heart of emotional detachment is radical self-love. It's the belief that you deserve to live unburdened by the chaos others try to hand you, that you deserve respect even when no one's watching, that your worth isn't tied to performance, perfection, or popularity. And with that clarity, you become steady. You become calm in a world that thrives on reaction. You no longer jump at every comment, every rejection, every unpredictable twist in the road. You move differently, more deliberately, more peacefully. Your inner peace becomes your home. It's more valuable than wealth, more powerful than approval, more essential than validation. It's the place where your mind quiets, your body rests, and your soul breathes. But the world is full of noise that wants to pull you out of that place, to tempt you into conflict, comparison, and doubt. That's why guarding your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. Because when your peace is compromised, everything else begins to unravel. Your clarity, your focus, your strength, they all suffer when you allow too much noise in. Most people don't even realize how easily they give away their peace. A small comment turns into hours of rumination. One negative interaction ruins an entire day. Toxic people drain their joy and redirect their focus. They replay arguments that no longer matter. They drown in what-ifs and regrets. This mental clutter builds slowly, but it's corrosive. It steals time, drains energy, and clouds your ability to live in the present. But when you begin to detach, When you choose not to take on every emotion or reaction as your own, something changes. You stop being pulled in every direction. You stop letting the outer world dictate your inner one. And in that space, you begin to reclaim your life, not as a performance for others, but as a quiet, steady act of self-honor. Protecting your inner peace means refusing to get pulled into cycles that drain you. It's the quiet but firm decision to say no to unnecessary drama and to walk away from anything that unsettles your spirit without good reason. It's about choosing to invest your energy in what uplifts you, not what drags you down. This is where real power begins. You can't protect your peace if you don't understand what threatens it. The first step is awareness, learning to recognize the people, thoughts, habits, and situations that consistently shake your balance. Awareness gives you clarity. It's the light that helps you avoid emotional traps before you fall into them. Sometimes it's subtle. Gossip that clouds your thoughts, news that fuels anxiety, a pattern of comparing yourself to others, or a relationship that constantly drains you. Whatever it is, you must be honest enough to name it, wise enough to understand it, and strong enough to keep it at a distance. Protecting your peace means building boundaries around your emotional and mental space. You are not responsible for fixing other people's chaos, but you are fully responsible for guarding your own calm. The world will always bring noise, distractions, and tests. There will always be people who push your buttons, moments that trigger your fears, and challenges that push you to your edge. But peace isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about learning to stay centered in the middle of it. When you choose to protect your peace, you're not escaping reality. You're learning how to meet it with a calm mind and a steady heart. You're learning to respond instead of react. You stay grounded even when everything around you is uncertain. This isn't something that happens by luck. It's a skill built through practice and intention. You train yourself to treat your peace like the sacred thing it is. And part of that training means learning to let go of what you can't control. You cannot control what others say or do, how they feel, or whether they understand you. Trying to manage what's out of your hands will only exhaust you. The real shift happens when you begin focusing on what you can control. Your thoughts, your reactions, your attitude, and your energy. That's the turning point. That's when you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. When you let go of what's outside your control, you open space for clarity, growth, and peace to take root. Self-care becomes essential in this process, not as a luxury but as a foundation. Taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's survival. Your mind needs rest, your heart needs protection, your body needs time to recover, and your spirit needs moments of quiet. The more you care for yourself, the stronger your peace becomes. This might mean turning down obligations, saying no to people-pleasing, stepping back from screens, or doing the things that genuinely refill your soul. You cannot show up fully for your life if you're constantly running on empty. Sometimes protecting your peace means walking away from unhealthy relationships, draining environments, or habits that sabotage your well-being. That kind of decision is never easy. It takes courage to choose your growth over your comfort, your healing over your history. But peace and chaos cannot coexist. And if something repeatedly threatens your calm, it cannot stay. Letting go doesn't mean you're weak or unkind. It means you love yourself enough to stop tolerating what harms you. It's an act of inner strength and wisdom. Mindfulness and stillness are also tools that help you stay connected to your peace. When you slow down, when you learn to observe your thoughts without judgment, you create space between yourself and your emotions. You stop being tossed around by every wave. You begin to build an inner refuge, a quiet place inside you that doesn't disappear when life gets loud. And the more often you return to that space, the more natural it becomes to live from it. You train your mind to choose calm over chaos, reflection over reaction. You're not just protecting your peace, you're becoming it. And above all, remember that protecting your peace isn't a one-time decision. It's a lifelong practice. There will be days when you get caught in the noise, when your boundaries slip, when stress sneaks in. That's okay. What matters is that you keep coming back. Every time you choose to return to your peace, you reinforce it. You grow more rooted, more resilient, more free. You stop living from a place of reaction and begin living from a place of deep, steady power. You choose calm instead of chaos, love instead of fear, strength instead of weakness. And that choice transforms everything. It shifts how you view yourself, how you move through life, and how you relate to the world around you. Protect your peace with intention, because it's both your greatest shield and your most sacred gift. When you honor your inner peace, you naturally become a light to others. Your calm is magnetic. Your steadiness inspires. You no longer feel the need to match the noise around you. You rise above it. You stop feeding the drama, stop engaging with negativity, and instead become an example of quiet power. Because real strength isn't loud or aggressive. It's grounded, unwavering, and deeply present. You live more consciously. You move with purpose. You become a reflection of authenticity. To protect your peace is to live on your terms, in your truth, and with your heart fully open. And when that becomes your way of life, nothing outside you can break what you've built within. That kind of peace is unstoppable. Have you ever noticed how many people go through life exhausted, overlooked, and emotionally drained? So often it's because they haven't learned to set clear boundaries. Boundaries that guard their time, protect their energy, and preserve their peace. Without them, it's easy to get used, stretched too thin, or treated like an afterthought. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about respecting yourself enough to define what you will and won't allow. Saying no without guilt isn't rude, it's reclaiming your right to decide how your life is lived. When you stop being available for everyone's demands, you stop being their emotional dumping ground or their last-minute solution. Boundaries are the invisible fences that protect your inner world. And when you build them strong, you create a life where your well-being isn't constantly under threat. Too many people are afraid of setting boundaries because they've been taught that it makes them selfish or unkind. They fear disappointing others or being seen as difficult. But the truth is, boundaries are a deep expression of self-love. When you say, "This is my limit," you're not rejecting someone. You're choosing to honor yourself. It's not a lack of care for others. It's the presence of care for yourself. You cannot continue to give from an empty cup. And every time you let your boundaries be crossed, you deplete your spirit just a little more. Learning to set boundaries without apology is about embracing your worth. It's about showing the world how to treat you by first treating yourself with dignity. And yes, once you start setting boundaries, you will face pushback. People who benefited from your silence or self-sacrifice may resist your change. They may question you, guilt you, or even lash out. But this is where your strength has to meet your clarity. Boundaries are not meant to isolate you. They're meant to protect you. They aren't walls that keep love out. They are gates that keep toxicity from flowing in. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. You don't need to defend your right to say no. This is your life, your space, your responsibility. The more you stand firm, the more others begin to adjust. And the more you realize how much power you've had all along. Setting unapologetic boundaries also means knowing your limits and respecting them. You're not invincible. You're not limitless. You have needs, emotional bandwidth, and thresholds that deserve your protection. When you begin to honor those limits, you create a model for others to follow. You show them that self-respect is non-negotiable, that your time matters, that your energy isn't available to be wasted. You stop tolerating subtle disrespect. You stop justifying emotional drain. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. And in doing so, you change not only how you live, but how the world responds to you. There's often confusion around boundaries, as if they're about punishment or rejection, but they're not. Boundaries are an act of care. They protect your peace and your relationships. Saying no to what depletes you is saying yes to what restores you. Distancing yourself from negativity isn't cruel, it's necessary. Refusing to accept disrespect isn't aggressive, it's healthy. Boundaries create the framework for genuine connection. Without them, resentment builds, communication erodes, chaos grows, but with them, relationships become more honest, respectful, and fulfilling. When you learn to set boundaries without apology, you stop waiting for others to value you and begin to show them how. And that single shift can redefine your life. Learning to set boundaries without apology begins with learning to say no, with clarity, with kindness, and without guilt. It doesn't require harshness or confrontation. It requires self-respect. Saying no calmly and confidently is a skill that gets easier with time and practice. And each time you do it, you send a message, not only to others, but to yourself, that your time, your energy, and your well-being matter. You break the cycle of people-pleasing and make space for more honest, respectful relationships. This is how you reclaim your peace and protect your power. You stop living to meet expectations that exhaust you, and you start living in alignment with your truth. Unapologetic boundaries also begin with honesty, the kind that requires looking inward. You must define what you will and will not allow, what drains your spirit, what behaviors cross the line, what demands compromise your joy or clarity. Once you know where your boundaries lie, you're less vulnerable to manipulation, less susceptible to guilt, and far more connected to your sense of self. You build protection around your spirit that allows love, compassion, and trust to flow in, but keeps confusion, disrespect, and resentment out. This inner clarity is liberating. It releases you from the weight of indecision and the cost of compromise. There will be moments when guilt creeps in, when fear or doubt whispers that you're being too harsh, too distant, too selfish. But each time you honor your limits with intention, you rewrite your story. You send yourself a powerful message: I matter. My peace matters. And though the discomfort of setting boundaries may come and go, the strength you gain from it stays. You learn to trust yourself. You build a solid foundation, one where your worth is no longer up for negotiation. The more you live this truth, the more respect you receive, not just from others, but from yourself. You become your own advocate, your own protector, your own steady voice in the noise. You stop asking for permission to live your life and begin to claim it fully. Boundaries then become more than rules. They become the framework of your freedom. They mark the path to a more grounded, fulfilling life. When you uphold your limits with love and firmness, you create a life rooted in dignity and purpose. Setting boundaries without apology isn't just a skill, it's a quiet revolution. It's the decision to stop playing small, to stop being the peacekeeper at the expense of your own peace. It's choosing strength over silence, clarity over confusion, and power over passivity. When you do this consistently, you no longer live in fear of rejection or conflict. You live in the confidence of your truth. That is where real freedom begins. And just as boundaries protect your energy, silence protects your strength. Silence is not emptiness. It's not weakness. It's not surrender. It's a form of power so deep and steady that most people overlook it. In a world that never stops talking, that demands instant reactions and constant explanations, silence becomes your refuge. It's the place where your mind settles, your emotions soften, and your inner voice finally has space to be heard. There's strength in choosing stillness when everything around you is noisy. There's courage in holding your peace when chaos tempts you to react. Silence allows you to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. It sharpens your awareness. You start hearing what's not being said. You begin to recognize patterns, sense truths, and act with intention instead of impulse. Silence isn't passive. It's the space where you gather your strength before choosing your next move. The strongest people aren't always the loudest. They're often the ones who've mastered the art of restraint, who know when to speak and when to be still. Their silence commands respect because it's not rooted in fear, it's rooted in discipline. That kind of silence becomes a shield. It protects your peace from unnecessary conflict, and it guards your focus from distractions that lead nowhere. In silence, you reflect. You confront your fears, your doubts, and your pain without distraction. You see things more clearly when you stop trying to explain yourself to everyone. You begin to wait, not with anxiety, but with patience. You face life with more clarity, not because you've escaped the noise, but because you've learned not to let it in. The world may push you to speak, defend, or prove yourself, but silence teaches you that you don't have to. You don't have to explain your boundaries. You don't have to justify your healing. You don't owe anyone an argument to validate your choices. There is immense power in simply standing firm, in honoring your truth quietly and completely. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the presence of it, held with grace. When you embrace that, you begin to live from a place no one can shake. Silence can be your most powerful statement. It says, "I am enough," without needing an audience. It says, "I trust my direction," without seeking approval. When you embrace the strength of silence, you stop wasting your breath on those who don't hear you or won't value what you offer. You begin to conserve your energy, choosing your words with purpose and your moments with intention. Quiet confidence becomes your language. It's magnetic because it doesn't demand attention. It commands it through presence alone. Silence also serves as a shield. When others try to provoke you, drag you into conflict, or disrupt your peace, choosing silence is not retreat, it's strategy. Walking away from unnecessary battles isn't weakness, it's clarity. You don't need to prove your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to explain your choices to anyone who questions your peace. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. In that pause, you maintain your power. In that restraint, you draw the line that chaos cannot cross. Your silence, held with intention, speaks louder than any defense. But silence is more than resistance. It's also a gateway to deeper understanding. When you quiet your voice, you create space to listen, truly listen. You begin to hear not just what is said, but what is meant. You sense unspoken emotions, pain, truth, and vulnerability in others. This is where empathy lives. This is how connection begins. Silence opens the heart to wisdom rather than judgment. And when you become a calm, listening presence in a world that rarely stops talking, you become someone others trust and seek in their storm. There are also moments when silence becomes the space where you find yourself again. When your thoughts are loud, when your emotions are scattered, when the world feels too fast, silence brings you home. It's in stillness that your inner voice rises above the noise. That quiet place within is where clarity lives. It's where decisions are made, not through pressure, but through presence. Silence helps you sort what truly matters from what doesn't. It sharpens your intuition, strengthens your resolve, and guides your next step with clarity. Choosing silence in those moments isn't about avoiding life. It's about moving through it with awareness. The world may celebrate noise, urgency, and performance, but those who are truly strong choose another way. They choose restraint over reaction. They choose grace over impulse. Their power isn't in how loud they speak, but in how still they remain. True strength doesn't shout, it listens, it observes, and it acts only when necessary. This quiet power creates a foundation so steady that no storm can shake it. It's the mountain that remains, even as winds howl around it. When you learn to rest in this kind of silence, you don't just change how you move through life, you change your life entirely. Yes, silence can feel like solitude. In a world addicted to stimulation, choosing silence may feel like you're stepping away from connection. But it's in this stillness that you reconnect with yourself. You begin to hear your hopes, your doubts, your dreams, without the filter of judgment or distraction. You find strength that isn't reactive, but rooted. Faith that isn't loud, but lasting. When you choose silence, you're not withdrawing. You're choosing depth over noise, peace over performance, intention over reaction. That is the kind of strength few people understand, but once you find it, it changes everything. The power in silence is the ability to be fully present, grounded, thoughtful, and unapologetically whole. It's what allows you to act with precision, to love without losing yourself, and to move through difficulty with grace. It's what keeps you steady when the world wavers. And when you live with that kind of inner quiet, you become unstoppable. Your silence becomes more than stillness. It becomes sanctuary, strength, and strategy. And while silence protects your energy, there's another form of inner mastery that's often misunderstood: indifference. Many see indifference as a sign of apathy or weakness, a lack of care or surrender. But when transformed, indifference becomes clarity. It becomes a focused filter that allows you to stop reacting to everything that doesn't deserve your attention. When you stop giving your energy to what doesn't serve you, you stop living at the mercy of emotional chaos. Indifference, when mastered, is not coldness. It's control. It's the ability to observe without absorbing, to walk through noise without letting it shake your focus. It's not about shutting off your heart. It's about becoming fiercely intentional with your mind. You no longer chase every distraction or defend yourself in every conversation. You don't try to please everyone or prove anything. You simply remain aligned with what matters. This kind of indifference is quiet discipline, a steady hand, a sharpened focus that lets you rise above the noise and act only when action is worth your time. This kind of indifference doesn't numb you, it refines you. It creates the mental space your deepest ambitions need to grow. There's power in releasing what doesn't serve you, the opinions that weigh you down, the conflicts that aren't yours, the emotional triggers that deplete your energy. When you detach from distractions, you reclaim your focus. You stop being pulled in every direction by drama, noise, or the endless chase for validation. Instead, your energy becomes centered, directed solely toward your values and goals. Indifference, when rooted in purpose, becomes a boundary, a filter, a force field. It's the choice to care intentionally, to pour your energy only into what fuels growth, and to let everything else fall away. Transformed this way, indifference becomes clarity. It's not about closing yourself off from the world, it's about knowing what's worth your attention. You aren't indifferent because you don't care. You're indifferent because you care enough to protect your energy from exhaustion and chaos. Focus requires discipline. It demands emotional clarity and the courage to ignore distractions. If you react to every slight, every criticism, every passing conflict, you scatter your energy and weaken your resolve. But when you wield indifference with purpose, your fire doesn't burn out, it burns steady. You stop getting lost in the noise and instead move with direction and intention. The world is loud with demands, drama, and digital chaos. Social media thrives on emotional reaction, on stirring up urgency. But you don't have to play along. You can choose distance, you can choose silence. You don't owe anyone a response. You don't need to explain your choices to those who don't understand your path. Indifference allows you to remain centered amid the noise. It's not coldness, it's control. It's the peace of knowing where you're headed and the power to not be moved by the chaos around you. That kind of calm is magnetic. It's the presence of strength, not the absence of emotion. But the greatest distraction isn't always external. It's often the noise within: fear, self-doubt, overthinking. These internal critics can be louder than any outside voice. Turning indifference inward means learning to silence those doubts. It's choosing not to react to every anxious thought or every what if. It's learning to say, not now. This doesn't serve me. That shift is powerful. It clears space for decisive action. It frees you to move boldly instead of spinning in hesitation. Indifference at its core is emotional intelligence. It's not detachment from feeling, it's mastery over your reactions. It's knowing when to lean in and when to step back, when to act and when to wait. It's choosing presence over impulse, awareness over chaos. And when you live this way, you stop giving your emotions the power to hijack your time and attention. You become intentional, focused, anchored, Mastering this mindset means becoming the captain of your life. You're no longer drifting, reacting to every wave. You're steering with vision. And when challenges come, as they always do, you're no longer thrown off course. You meet them without panic, without wasted energy. You channel your focus into solutions, not frustration. You see setbacks as part of the path, not proof of failure. Indifference to distractions is what gives you the mental clarity to persist, to adapt, and to overcome without losing your peace. This isn't passive acceptance, it's deliberate strength. It's presence, sharpened by purpose. And perhaps most importantly, turning indifference into focus is how you protect your dreams. You stop seeking approval. You stop waiting for consensus. You learn to trust your own vision, even when no one else sees it. That trust requires a level of detachment from outside judgment that few are willing to develop, but it's necessary. Because greatness doesn't grow in crowds. It grows in solitude, in quiet conviction, in the calm focus of someone who's done waiting for permission. When you stop seeking validation, you begin seeking results. And that shift changes everything. You stop performing for applause and start acting with purpose. Indifference, when mastered, becomes a powerful fuel for discipline. It keeps you consistent long after motivation fades. It helps you turn down distractions, resist temptations, and ignore shortcuts that pull you off course. Turning indifference into focused intent is the secret weapon of those who accomplish great things. They don't waste energy on opinions or noise. They keep their vision clear, their steps steady, and their purpose sharp. This kind of focus doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be seen. It just moves, unshakable, unstoppable, and turns quiet effort into undeniable results. Choosing indifference in this way is an act of power. It's a gift you give yourself, the ability to reclaim your attention, your energy, and your direction. It's the courage to put peace ahead of chaos and your mission above every distraction. And once you master this, you become unbreakable, not because you've stopped feeling, but because you've learned when to care and when to let go. That's how you walk through the world with clarity, strength, and purpose. That's how you win, not by chasing applause, but by turning indifference into the sharpest focus the world has ever seen. There comes a point in every life when the need for approval reveals itself as a trap, a prison dressed up as belonging. Maybe you've spent years molding yourself to fit in, chasing nods of acceptance, hoping your worth would be confirmed by someone else. But eventually you realize true power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from self-respect. That's the moment you stop being a passenger in your own life and start driving your path forward, led by your own truth. Self-respect becomes your armor. It protects you from the sting of judgment and the emptiness of rejection. It is the quiet, unwavering truth that your value is not up for debate. It means refusing to shrink so others can be comfortable. Approval is fleeting. It changes with trends, moods, and moments, but self-respect is constant. It's a steady conviction that lives within you, regardless of who's watching. When you operate from self-respect, you stop waiting for the crowd to cheer. You learn to cheer for yourself. You honor your boundaries. You stand by your principles even when it costs you popularity. This isn't arrogance, it's courage, the kind of strength it takes to look yourself in the eye and say, I am enough. Without that foundation, you'll always be vulnerable to the addiction of approval, the habit that drains your peace and stalls your growth. Kindness is often confused with people-pleasing, but they are not the same. True kindness flows from self-respect. It allows you to give without losing yourself. But when kindness is driven by a need to be liked, it becomes sacrifice, your energy, your authenticity, your truth, all traded for brief moments of validation. Living this way comes at a cost, but when you choose self-respect, you no longer pay that price. You stop dimming your light to fit into someone else's world. Instead, you live in alignment with your values, even when it means walking alone. And in that solitude, you discover your power. Living for approval leads to fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of failing to please everyone. These fears keep you trapped in hesitation and silence, in self-doubt and shrinking. But self-respect breaks those chains. It gives you permission to say no without guilt and yes without apology. It gives you the strength to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your truth. And when you start living for yourself, fear loses its grip. Every day, the world will test your self-respect. You'll face judgment, criticism, and voices that try to pull you back into the chase for approval. But those voices only have power if you give it to them. Self-respect is your shield. It's the voice inside that says, I know who I am, no matter what you say. When you root yourself in that kind of strength, negativity can't shake you. You become resilient. Not because life stops being hard, but because you've stopped giving your worth away. This is how setbacks become comebacks. This is how criticism becomes fuel. And this is how you build a life not based on applause, but on truth, purpose, and inner conviction. That's what makes you unbreakable. That's what makes you free. Choosing self-respect over approval begins with embracing your imperfections. It means recognizing that worthiness isn't tied to perfection. Approval seeking often demands a flawless performance, a mask worn for acceptance. But self-respect honors your full humanity. It sees your mistakes as teachers and your scars as stories of strength. When you accept yourself as you are, you stop apologizing for your existence. You walk with your head high, not because you are perfect, but because you are real. Your value no longer hinges on applause, but on your integrity, your growth, and your love for yourself. This kind of radical acceptance is liberating. It transforms not only how you see yourself, but how you relate to others. When you respect yourself, you naturally attract people who mirror that respect. You draw clear boundaries, not to push others away, but to protect your peace. You refuse to accept manipulation, dishonesty, or anything that diminishes your spirit. This isn't about being cold or unkind. It's about being wise. You choose connections that uplift you. You stand by people who see your worth and reflect it. And when someone tries to take that away, you walk away without hesitation. That's not weakness. It's strength rooted in self-respect. Embracing self-respect over approval also means putting your needs first, without guilt. It's understanding that your time, your emotional energy, and your peace are not endless resources to be handed out without care. You stop overextending yourself just to meet others' expectations at the cost of your own well-being. And no, this isn't selfish. It's necessary. Because when you care for yourself first, you give from a place of fullness instead of depletion. Self-respect teaches you that your happiness is your responsibility, not a side effect of making others comfortable. This is the shift that sets you free to live authentically and sustainably. But the path isn't easy. Choosing self-respect often means unlearning years of approval seeking. It means breaking habits, facing fear, and sometimes standing alone. Yet every time you choose your truth over external validation, you grow stronger. You begin to build a life anchored in authenticity. You stop letting others define your worth and start shaping your own identity with clarity, with courage, with peace. You become a beacon in a world that's starving for something real. And with that shift, something powerful happens. You reclaim your life. You stop living in the shadows of others' expectations and step fully into your own light. That's where real confidence is born, not from validation, but from unshakable self-worth. It's the foundation for every dream you dare to chase, every line you draw, and every moment of stillness you honor. When you commit to self-respect, everything begins to change, not because the world softens, but because you strengthen. You rise. You begin to live boldly, love fiercely, and walk your path without apology. There's a quiet strength in learning to act like you don't care. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity and peace. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth, chase attention, or perform for applause. True strength lives in the stillness of knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you'll no longer accept. It's choosing dignity over drama, silence over chaos, peace over performance, Acting like you don't care doesn't mean closing your heart. It means opening your eyes. It means protecting your energy from the places and people who never earned your loyalty. You begin to detach, not because you're cold, but because you've been too warm in spaces that couldn't hold you. You stop engaging in battles that don't serve you. You speak less, observe more, and respond only when it's worth it. You stop explaining yourself to people who never cared to understand you in the first place. You say no with the same strength you once used to say yes. You stop waiting for permission to protect your peace, and you no longer feel guilty for choosing it. In that silence, you find your voice. In that stillness, you reclaim your power. You discover that not every situation needs your energy, not every challenge deserves your reaction, and not every opinion matters. You become unshakable, not because nothing touches you, but because you no longer allow the noise to move you from your center. This is what it means to live with self-respect. This is what it means to finally be free. You begin to find strength in stillness, healing in solitude, and clarity in distance. And in that quiet space, something shifts. You realize that some people only recognize your value when you stop showing up. When that moment comes, you no longer chase, you no longer beg, and you no longer hope for someone else to affirm what you've already discovered within yourself. You stop waiting for someone to save you. You stop expecting someone else to heal what you were always capable of facing. You become your own anchor, your own rescue, your own safe place. Your focus shifts. You stop searching outward for approval and start turning inward for peace. You begin to pour your energy into what nurtures you instead of what depletes you. The time you once spent overthinking, people-pleasing, and worrying, you now devote to self-discipline, clarity, and self-love. You learn how to show up for yourself, how to sit with yourself and still feel whole, how to love yourself deeply, even when no one else is watching. You no longer wait for applause to feel valid. You become your own source of strength. And in that transformation, you finally understand. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. Silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Letting go isn't failure, it's freedom. You stop apologizing for choosing yourself. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You no longer minimize your needs, your voice, or your dreams just to avoid discomfort. You realize that the most powerful move you can make is to walk away from anything that disrespects your worth. And when you do it quietly, not to prove a point, but to protect your soul. You stop trying to fix people. You start changing your access to them. You no longer cling to what drains you just because you're afraid to be alone. Because now you know peace is better than company that costs your spirit. You rise, not out of pride, but because you're no longer willing to stay where your light is dimmed. You rise above the noise, the drama, the manipulation, and the chaos that once held you down. You elevate, not for attention, but for freedom. You grow, not to be seen, but to finally see yourself clearly. And when you return to the world, you return different. Not louder, but more grounded. Not harder, but wiser. Not bitter, but healed. You become the version of yourself you always needed. The one who protects your heart, honors your energy, and refuses to settle for anything less than what your soul deserves. You choose indifference not to numb your emotions, but to focus your energy. You let go of what you can't control, and instead, you master what you can. You stop responding to everything that calls your name but doesn't deserve your attention. You stop fighting battles that don't serve your growth. Your discipline becomes louder than your doubt. Your consistency becomes stronger than your past. And your self-respect becomes the foundation for everything you build moving forward. You live with grace, but you no longer allow disrespect to hide behind the masks of love or loyalty. And in all of this, you uncover a deeper, quieter love for yourself, the kind that stands tall even when the world tries to make you feel small, the kind that shows up for you on the days you feel most invisible, the kind that doesn't need to be announced to be real. It simply brings peace. You become whole, not because of what you've gained, but because of what you finally released. You stop living for people. You stop living for applause. You begin living for truth, for purpose, for your soul. This journey isn't about pretending not to care. It's about releasing the things that never deserved your care in the first place. It's about choosing peace over attachment, truth over comfort, and authenticity over performance. It's about being done. Done with proving. Done with explaining. Done with shrinking. And in that sacred surrender, you become everything you were always meant to be, by letting go of everything you were never meant to hold. Thank you for listening with your heart. May you leave this moment not with bitterness, but with clarity. Not with a closed heart, but a stronger one. Protect your peace, honor your worth, and never again apologize for choosing yourself. God bless you. Stay strong and keep walking in truth.